Kia ora. My name is Keri Garlic. I'm one of the founders of Empower Kia, and I'm also the co-president as well. What I want to share with you guys today as part of your online PLD is looking at test anxiety and how does that influence our memory. As always, I like to explain how we kind of got to this space that I've decided this is worth making a PLD on, because I always like to understand the why to things. So why am I doing this right now? I got a message from one of my friends who actually isn't a teacher, but she is a tutor in mathematics, and she has a student that's really struggling with their anxiety when it comes to learning and getting tested. So she asked me for some advice, and I thought, yep, let me give you the rundown of all the things that I think are important to understand test anxiety and how that influences memory. And even though this is a student that obviously is getting tutored and can afford that tuition, this advice that I'm giving is is very useful for our students that are in high equity index schools because they often have a lot of test anxiety. So this is actually beneficial, yes, in particular for high equity index schools, but also I think other people might find this helpful as well, because we're going to talk about a little bit of brain science and trauma and managing time and things like that. So something to kind of keep in mind when we're thinking about anxiety and memory is that anxiety is a natural life factor. It comes from our survival instincts, because we have to remember we are, at the end of the day, animals, and all of us, like my cats, the dogs, they all have a survival instinct, and that is going to get them nervous at times. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, humans have developed into a space where we're not being threatened by lions and tigers anymore, but we still have this leftover instinct. And we really don't want this instinct to happen during an assessment, because that's going to influence students' ability to access their memory, and that's going to affect their performance. So I am going to create a 5-part video series to kind of explain the different aspects of what we can do to address this. One of the important things that we got to remember with students that are at high equity index schools is that they often carry more trauma than schools that are at lower equity index, aka known previously as high decile schools or private schools. Not to say it doesn't exist, but it's definitely a bigger problem for us. So I highly recommend to teachers to get this book here called Creating Trauma-Informed Strength-Based Classrooms. It is essentially my school's quote-unquote Bible. And it's been so helpful in order for me as an educator to improve my practice, especially because I was going from a mid-decile school to a low-decile school, and I needed to relearn how to teach, and this book really helped me do that. Also suggest if you're looking for an e-reader, definitely get the Kobo instead of the Kindle. I find that I get to actually own my books with the Kobo, and I can actually access the library resources like Libby on my Kobo. So it's worthwhile to switch ecosystems, which I did do last year. The other thing is the Kobo has now come out with a colored version of their e-reader, which is great if you love graphic novels. And like if you're like me and you like to highlight and write on the margins and things like that. So not an ad, not getting paid for this, but suggesting highly for Kobos. Yeah, they just seem to be like a hidden gem that people don't seem to really notice. Anyway, so if you're like me and you like to write things down, Kobo's great. Definitely worthwhile investment. This that's currently being recorded on, what you're seeing on my screen right now is an IPEVO. It's IPEVO. It's a document camera, which I use for my teaching. Really great, again, for high equity index schools because it slows me down. This one was actually gifted to me, by a fellow teacher who found it wasn't working for her situation, but definitely works when it comes to high equity index schools. The other thing that's really nice is that I can switch my papers around and switch back and things, and you don't have to race to the chalkboard and things like that. Sorry, whiteboard. Anyway, this is going to be a 5-part series looking at different things. The first thing in this agenda is going to be talking about the process of exam marking. Then we're going to look at CPR, which is my little cute nickname for retrieval practice. We will then talk about prioritizing, because when you are bombarded with so many things to do, you get quite overwhelmed. And this is going to teach students and teachers how to make sure that students know how to rank things. Next is going to be desensitization to the exam process. And then lastly, how can we design our internal assessments to reduce that anxiety as well. So that is what the series is going to look like. And if you guys have any questions or feedback, I will create a Google form, and also you're welcome to email me either at my work email address or the Empower Kia email address. So work email address for me, if you're trying to get a hold of me, is k.garlick, Garlick, at edgewater.school.nz. Or if you're trying, you can also get through on the Empower Kia email addresses, which is the secretary or the president one, will be checked. So yeah, I really encourage this sort of dialogue, because this is then helping me understand what our community needs are. So cool. I will see you in a bit. Hopefully you stick around for some more of these videos, but you can jump around whatever you think is useful for you.